Everyone. Hopefully my sound's still on. Uh, yeah, look, welcome to another night. Brett's not here again. The recording started. So I've got you again tonight and tomorrow and Thursday night. Look, tonight we're going to be looking at the development application process. That's through your local council. Before we get into that, though, there's just a couple of things we have to talk about. There was Tyson just asked about the field day, the people that completed their field days on the 24th. Their assessment is due this Sunday. Okay. All right. The groups that completed their field day on the 31st, they've still got the Sunday after that. Okay. So I'll remind you as we get closer, but most of you should be, hopefully most of you are all on top of that. Just at the top of this screen here, we've got Gantt project and we've also got OpenProj. Now what they are, they're two management systems. Okay, it helps you lay out your job. It has activities. There'll be critical paths. You'll get into that next week sometime, but it'd be an idea if anyone has the time to just download one of these. There's another one, I think it's called Project Libre. They're all free. They all do a very similar thing, but it'd be a really good idea just to download it. Don't leave it to the last minute. Download it now. If you download it this week and familiarise yourself a little bit with it, that'll be good. But if you leave it to next week when the lesson's on, you'll find that you could be a little bit
share the screen, please.
Under the pump if it doesn't work for you. You're best to be prepared, which is what we're doing with on-site. It's about planning, organising and preparation. So that's what you're going to be doing with that Gantt project and OpenProj. All right. If you can do the attendance choice. That would be good. Then just before we start this week, just talk to your boss and just find out about their planning schedule. Okay, you can just discuss it with them. Just say, what do they do? Have they got plans that forecast their work on a job that it's forecast maybe 2 weeks ahead, 1 week ahead, or are they 12 weeks ahead? They know what's going to be happening for the next 12 weeks. Hi, Brett. Oh, I thought it was. Okay. 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 All right. Bye. Okay. Well, that's better. You've got a screen to look at. Okay. So it was just me full blown on your screens, was it? Okay. You can have that. Is my sound still on? Because I've changed something. Sometimes when I change things, the sound drops off. Okay, it's good. All right, so yeah, just talk to your boss about how he plans it. When he actually prices a job, he has a schedule in mind. He knows from pricing it how long things are going to take, or he hopefully knows how long things are going to take. So, and he would have a schedule in his mind. He'd be contacting the plumber, the electrician, the gyprocker, a lot of people, bricklayer, concreter, just to let them know it's coming up. So just talk to him and see how far ahead they plan, and they can predict what work you'll be doing in the next 10 days, 20 days, 30 days. So, okay. Assessment 1, we've got to go through assessment 1 now. Assessment 1, I'll just put it up here. Now, this is your first assessment. We'll just go through briefly. You can fill this out as we go through over the next few nights. It's got up that it's due this Sunday, but there's parts in here that you can't actually complete until you've actually looked at those Gantt charts and OpenProj. So, okay, just keep it simple. Brett was going to go through this with you, but he said, look, it'd be better to go through it with them now. You know, you just insert your company name and logo here, your policy statement. Now, a policy statement could be something like, we believe we want to deliver quality work to try and get a good name and build on that good name, keep getting people in it. Just something that's a broad policy statement. Organisational structures and responsibility. You've already completed that in business, so you can actually just put a small summary, just a small summary in that one. Your work health and safety policy and procedures. This has been completed in the work health and safety cluster. So what you can do, you can just put a policy in there, you know, just a summary of what your work health and safety policies and procedures are. Okay. The next one you've got is construction procedures and programming, and this is where this OpenProj and Gantt project and Libre will come in, and you'll be doing that. I think it is next week. So it's got a note here. Processes as per each project, determine planning and program to be completed as per company policy. What planning program will you use? How will it be distributed, and which parties? So with that, as I said, I'm not 100% sure. It does say it's due this Sunday, but I'm not quite sure. I think it might be extended because of that. Communications. It's showing how you're going to communicate all the current information on the job, all the information that you have prepared prior to the job starting, and then any of the information that is changing as the job's proceeding with, you know, could be possibly variations or something like that. Now, it could be in the form of a flow chart. You know, it might go from your project manager or builder, you know, down to the site supervisor or foreman, a subcontractor, you know, suppliers. So, you know, just communications, how you would actually keep the companies and contractors that you use and the people that you employ, how you would keep them up to speed, okay, with the things that are going on. Okay, so document control. Hang on, I'll just lower this a little bit more. Okay, document control. If we looked at document control, what it is, it's just exactly the same. Give the details of how the documents will be received and distributed, including all plans and specifications. You know, you've got to come up with something with that. And checklists and ITPs. And what an ITP is, it's an inspection test plan. Okay, so you've got to come up with an inspection test plan. You've got strategies for control of multiple projects. So what happens is, if you've got one job going, it's hard enough to maintain effective communications and control of with all the documentation that you need, and your progress payments and payments that you've made to subcontractors and payments on accounts. But if you're actually doing, if you've got a couple of projects going at the same time, and it depends on the size of the project, but if you have got various projects happening, you've got to have some sort of document control and a strategy for the control of multiple projects. So it doesn't have to be too complicated, just something that would be effective. Okay, procedures for on-site resource requirements include temporary services, plant and equipment, on-site labour requirements, site fencing. So just list your site procedures for site setup to practical completion and final handover. Okay, so you just have to include that. It's just like a flow chart through the job, the procedures on site. Site testing. Now, this requires a little bit of imagination, but in the Illawarra, there is a lot of site testing. It can be for mine subsidence. It can also be for soil, to see what sort of soil there is, you know, what soil there is. Okay, you might find shale. If you drill down, you might find fill. So it also depends on where where the project is being constructed. Okay, so checklists and ITPs. What's your quality control procedure? Okay, and it's more about trying to ensure you have everything in place before you go into business. Yeah, and your business will evolve, all your plans will evolve, but you've got to start somewhere. Control and record keeping for on-site personnel and communications and deliveries. You know, how is communication and information recorded for later referrals if required? How are deliveries taken and payments paid? How's office personnel know what deliveries have been made? Okay, so, you know, normally, depending on the size of the site, there might be a site office out the front. And the site office out the front, any deliveries that come in, there's usually a book that the delivery person will sign, and so will the supervisor on site, and they'll just make a note of what the invoice number is and just a bit of a summary on what was what was delivered. Removal of services, hazardous material in accordance with EPA requirements. It's okay. You would just have a brief summary there. If any hazardous materials uncovered, that you would remove it as per EPA requirements. It's not a huge thing. Some of these are, you know, just a couple of sentences. Changes to standard plans and specs. When plans are superseded, explain the company procedure to communicate and distribute to all parties concerned. I think anyone that's worked on a building site has seen or been involved with someone that's had an old plan. They look at their plan and it's not exactly what, it's not up to date. And someone says, oh no, that's been changed. They point it and they say, oh, that's been changed. Haven't you got the new plan? So you've got to come up with a system that how you're going to keep everyone on site up to date with the plans and specifications. Processes in place to supervise on-site work to ensure the performance of work to industry regulatory standard. Okay, so you've got to have just processes in place to supervise and make sure that everyone's doing the job properly. One of the things that that would be efficient in that respect is you only employ licensed contractors. Okay, if they're people that work for you on wages, they are under your instructions completely. But if it's a contractor, if they're licensed, you would only employ a licensed person, because if they don't do the right thing, you've got a comeback. And the other thing is, once you develop a good crew of subcontractors, you will keep using those subcontractors, you know, because if you're using good contractors, they're making your job easy. If you're using a few duds because they're cheap, they've just made your job really hard. Okay. Okay, terms and conditions of progress payments. Okay, refer to the contract and explain how payments are received from clients and payments are made to subcontractors. So, okay, you've got to have in place how you know when a progress payment's coming up. You also have to know how much you've paid your suppliers and how much you've paid your contractors, because some of your suppliers and contractors will get part payment of what they're supplying, whether it's materials or labour or both. They mightn't be able to wait till full payment, because they might do a little bit of work at the start of the job, then 3 months later they do a little bit more work, so they'll want some progress payments along the way. Back charge and unsatisfactory work notice. You've got to just put down what your policy would be for that. Variations. Explain your procedure for variation processes. You know, it all has to be in writing. It's signed by the owner, signed by you or your supervisor, and how you actually get that information to everyone else. Defects liability period. What's your process for defect liability period? You can refer to your contract. A lot of the time people finish their house is completed. The owners move in, and the first thing the owners do, and they say, oh gee, there's a bit of timber's got a mark on it here, and there's a hole in the wall over here, and one of these tiles are scratched. And instead of running out there on a daily basis and fixing up little things, normally they wait 40 days or something, and they go there and they fix a whole lot of little minor things. So you've got to have a policy for that. Final handover application. What's the company's process for final handover? Okay, you would have to have something in place as to, is all money paid at that final handover? Is it paid prior to the final handover? What would your policies be? And list the process of building approvals and explain how this is achieved. Okay, we talked a little bit last night about the various inspections that you have to get on site, and how you would have procedures and policies in place so that you don't miss any. Okay, to miss an inspection is critical, could prove critical, because you couldn't get the final sign off on the job. Okay, so you've got to have just a policy. These are only brief, but they have to be pretty solid, a pretty good effort on what your policies are. Don't save. All right. Okay, so let's just have a look. As I said, you can ask your boss what they do and how far ahead they plan. Ask them whether they have what sort of a diary they have. Do they have a digital diary? Do they have a written diary? Do they just rely on their memory? And I can't think of many people that would just rely on their memory, but you might have an outstanding boss. Okay, so if we're going to look at a couple of different councils, and just the sites are very, very similar, because they're all local government, and all the local governments have rules and guidelines from the state government. So the state government has its policies and regulations in place, and then each local government, like Wollongong or Wagga or anywhere else, they adhere to these regulations. Okay, but like a lot of things, there can be slight differences in how they interpret the regulations. So all councils are pretty much the same, but there are differences. So, okay, let's just have a look at Sydney. When is a DA required? Look, some of the websites of the councils are very, very good. If you look at this, Sydney's quite a cosmopolitan place, and it's going to differ with what it offers as to a suburban one. I mean, they have, sections for small bars, food and drink premises, street art, late trading businesses, live music and performance venues. So it is a more cosmopolitan place. I'm sure Wollongong we have bars and things like that, but not on the same scale. We have a big residential area, but Sydney's more, out there with restaurants and bars and late night venues and live music. Look, you can look at this. Okay, what sort of consent's required for a development application? The Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. It says it defines development as using land, subdividing land, erecting a building, carrying out work, pruning or removing trees, demolition, or any other matter controlled by an environmental planning instrument. To get development consent, you've got to lodge a DA. Now, DA is just short for development application. And there's there's two that you can get. You can get a complying development application, which means that your development complies with absolutely everything, all the council codes and regulations. There's nothing that it doesn't comply with, and all it does is it just streamlines your approval process. If there's anything that doesn't comply or is a bit questionable, they can't do it. It has to go through council. Okay, and that can take it can take a longer period of time. Okay, depending on the scope of your work, proposed development, there are different requirements for different categories: small scale residential, small scale commercial, tree pruning and removal, small bars, food and drink, street art, late night trading, live music, unlicensed businesses, and all other developments. All right. Look, you can read this just as well as what I can. They are pretty interesting when you look. If you come over here, you can have a look at the different processes. You know, this is an interesting one, and if it's Sydney, there would be a lot of heritage and conservation involved. Okay, so if we just clicked on that, you know, heritage floor place scheme, floor space scheme, heritage conservation areas. So you can look at maps and just have a look and just see, you know, list of heritage maps. Okay. And look, as I said, if you're interested, the information is there. You know, to say I'm familiar with it, I'm not. Okay, I usually got interested in things that involved me. Pretty selfish sort of attitude, but that's how it was. Okay, so yeah, look, City of Sydney, that's a website. It's really good, and it is slightly different from Wollongong. I'll have a look at Wollongong. Just their website. Only about 6 months ago, I put in an application for something, and their website was terrible. I had to contact them by phone and speak to a few people, and they said that their website was being upgraded at that stage. So I think what we're looking at now is the upgrade. Okay, so it's got everything here. You can click what you are: a business, a visitor, a resident. Council officials, we're not interested in that, or I'm not interested in that in particular. But okay, if we want to lodge a DA, we've got lodge a DA. We could have a look at that. DA types, you know, if we look at the DA types here, complete a DA form. Okay, these are you can lodge the following types of development applications online: alterations and additions, new dwellings, dual locks, secondary dwelling, ancillary structures, you know, carports and decks, swimming pool, demolition, change of use, home business. Okay, so it's all there. As I said, this is much better than when I had a look a little while ago. All right, statement of environmental effects. I won't go too far into that because there's something that we're looking at in Moodle tonight that will probably elaborate and be a little bit better. It then goes to the drawings of the proposed development. Read our format guidelines for the plan, so we can just click on that, and the guide below, it talks about the guide below lists those documents, plans and drawings you should provide with your development application, including the right information in the right format. Okay, if you submit your plans to council and they aren't in the correct format, they just return them to you. They don't make do if the scales aren't correct, if the drawings aren't correct, if the title box isn't correct. They're not going to fiddle around with it. They just send it back to you after it's sat on the desk for probably 3 weeks. So your job then is 3 weeks behind. So what it is, you're better off to try and familiarise yourself with exactly what they want. Okay, digital documents. So these are what we can actually just send. Each document or plan should be saved as a separate file. The only exception to this is elevation plans, shadow plans, stormwater layouts. Like I said, you can read that as well as I can. Files must be provided in a PDF. Okay, so they're saying don't send it in Word, don't send it in a JPEG, only send it in PDF. Photos should be in a JPEG format. So it's pretty much exactly what you do with Moodle. Okay, you have restrictions on what you can submit, and it's hopefully clearly outlined to you. We'll just look for any comments there. And if it's not, if it is clearly outlined to you, sometimes you get things sent back. Okay, and it also says each file should be no larger than 10 megabytes. Okay, drawings and plans. Okay, I've been knocked back because they said my scale wasn't correct on a drawing. So, you know, it got returned to me. It didn't matter much because I wasn't in a hurry. But if you're in a hurry and you've got people working for you, it is best to familiarise yourself with exactly what is expected. Okay, so that's a little bit about Wollongong. You get development advice, owner's consent. That's an interesting one, and we'll go through that a little bit later as well. So that's Wollongong. Okay, there was one thing there. I'll just go back and just, there was exempt and complying development. I did talk about it, but DA form. Did it find, yeah, okay, so look, I'll find it and I'll open it up. I won't waste time just going through looking for it. But there was a little bit on what a complying development was. I did explain to you what it is. So what is the statement of environmental effects? Okay. Now this is where we are here. Now what it is, this that's as big as I can actually get it. It's just a fact sheet. Most councils now have, when you go to their on their website, when you're filling in a form for anything, they have a fact sheet. They have a checklist sometimes. They call it a checklist or a fact sheet, and it actually outlines what's expected. If you're sending in documents, I'll tell you what documents need to accompany that document you're sending in. Okay, so this just says, what do I need to include in a statement of environmental effects? A description of the proposed use of the site, the manner in which the development will comply with council's planning policies and relevant regulation. So there we have council's planning policies. A detailed description of the site, including any topographical features and constraints such as easements, flooding, filling, instability, contamination, bushfire hazard, etc. Details of vegetation on site. Okay, by that it means if there's any trees, because what happens with tree preservation, you can't just walk in and remove the trees to build your house, your swimming pool or anything else. You need to get permission to trim that tree and possibly remove it. Okay, some trees will have preservation orders on them, so you know it can be a bit of a ticklish situation. Details of any existing development on site, confirmation as to whether the development is to be staged. So here we are, we're still talking about statement of environmental effects. Details of the availability of servicing. A detailed description of traffic management issues. The proposed method of stormwater drainage. Okay, the best stormwater drainage is the one where you can get fall out to the street. That's just the easiest form of stormwater drainage you can get. But unfortunately, sometimes you need to put a pit in, and there could be a stormwater easement through different properties. So you need to be aware of that. And the proposed method of stormwater drainage in apartments, sometimes they have a pump out system. They have a pit in the garage on the lowest level, and they pump it out when it's full or part full. The impact of the development on the streetscape, which is really important because as a council, the council represents all the residents, and the residents don't want something that's grotesque, a grotesque building next door to them, or, you know, a horrible building that doesn't fit in with the rest of the streetscape. So that's the council's job to determine and refuse permission for that sort of development to go ahead. The impact of the development on the amenity of the adjoining residents, which is along the lines of exactly what we were just saying, and that includes privacy and overshadowing, potential environmental impacts, the method of soil and water management, and the method of waste management to be employed on the site, both during construction and following completion of the development. Okay, so that's what what a statement of environmental effects looks like. Okay, I know you can't read that because it was way too small, so that's why I had to read it. So we've looked at that statement. Okay, there's a little bit extra here. You know, if you need more information, the beauty about the digital age, it's just a click away. Okay, long time ago, you had to go and make appointments to see people, gain access to information. It was done on a lot of it was done face to face or right away to get information. Well, you know, now it is just a click away, much quicker, much more efficient. Okay, now I'll just show that one. We go down here to, okay, I'll just show this one and the next one. What it is I'll show the next two. When we actually lodge a development application, or we wish to lodge a development application, and we'll stick with Wollongong, and we'll stick with a development application for the Smiths. Okay, so that's the job that you used in plans and estimates. So you should be fairly familiar with that. Just want to make this a little bit bigger. Okay, can anyone? Oh, here we go. Okay, that's better. All right, so this is an application for development or to modify development consent. So this is got two, you can do the two on the one form. I looked at a few forms today. I had a look at Wagga's form. Wagga's was pretty similar. There's some small details that are different. The application type, so we'd be development application, your company name, just general information there. And it's the applicant details, okay? So it's that part there, the applicant details. Okay, now when we go down here a little bit further, okay, it does ask disclosure of political donation. So it's saying, have you got, is your brother or your wife on the council? So there's no, it's got to be a total disclosure, okay? I think that the term is nepotism or something. Okay, so here it is. It's just about interests and declaration of applicants. Okay, and this one here, the declaration by the applicants is, you know, that it's all true. It's all accurate. The information is correct. It's just saying that, you know, everything that you've done's right. So what happens with that is a lot of the time it will be the builder who fills out the application, submits the application to council. Okay, sometimes, or a lot of the times, clients aren't as comfortable with doing these sorts of things, so they would rather have the architect, the builder, or someone else do it. Some owners do prefer to put it in themselves. They think, well, I'm going to save a little bit of money because the builder's only going to charge me to put them in, charge me for his time. But it can be either person. There's nothing by law. But what happens when you apply for the DA and you've completed everything and you've done it as the builder, then what happens down here a little bit further, you've got to get the owner's consent. The first time I saw this, I thought, I filled all the forms out. I went down there to put plans in the council, and they said, oh, you've got to have the owner's consent. I said, owner's consent for what? And they said, you've got to have the owner's consent that they're aware of the application. And that was virtually it. And I said, you mean that I'm going to sneak in and put a room on the back of their house? But it's for consent. And I think it is also to give consent for the council officers to gain access to their property for inspections. But yeah, so if you submit an application on behalf of a client, you have to get the client to then sign the consent. So you need to take the forms away, or alternatively print them off, get them to sign that before you go down there. Pre-lodgement meetings. Look, this form here, I've got a better form than this. It's the same one, but what I did, I highlighted a few things. I thought it was a little bit better. Okay. So this other one was just highlighted, and it just had a few things highlighted, and this was what we said about political donations and gifts. Okay, is the applicant or landowner Wollongong City Council officer or something, or member of staff? Signature of the applicant, generally the builder's the applicant. I like those little tabs too. Development proposal, it's a description of work to be carried out. Consent is important for commercial context. Okay, thanks, Daniel. This was just what I was just saying. If the builder was the applicant, the owner must sign the consent. Okay, pre-lodgement meeting. Now, this is pretty important because sometimes it can not fast track your application through council, but it can minimise the delays. If you go and meet with a duty officer or an inspector who is the council's representative, you can discuss any potential issues that you see might delay your project. Okay. And that, as I said, that can be beneficial because sometimes when things get knocked back, they will sit on someone's desk for 2 or 3 weeks before they actually send out the letter to say that your application is unsuccessful and it needs to be modified. Okay, so sometimes those 3 weeks are fairly critical. So it is a really important issue to go and find and determine exactly what, with experience, you tend to think if there's something questionable on your plan or the application, just with your experience, you can actually usually pick up on it and you can go and ask them to start with. Okay, this environmental impact, which was what we were just talking about. And here we have integrated developments. Okay, so, we can have aquaculture, excavation or filling of a waterway. So, you could have a natural water course running through your block. It might only be a little sort of divot, but it might be running from 2 blocks away, so you can't actually block that water course, or you have to take into consideration that water course. Okay. Harm to marine vegetation, obstruct fish passage, rivers and lakes, roads, heritage, pollution. water and bushfire. Statistics, this is government, it's state government collecting statistics through the local government. So it's just floor areas, for development in excess of 2 million, please estimate the number of jobs to be created. So this is just development statistics. Okay, and this is just the part of the form that's to modify development consent. Okay, it just goes through here. Okay, application for development or to modify development consent. This is just the checklist, and like I said, it is really beneficial to you to be familiar, or as familiar as you can possibly be with the various councils and what they require. You can read that every bit as good as what I can. Electronic file format requirements, hard copy formats. It tells you the size of the paper, the scales. Is double or single-sided acceptable? And that's virtually it for Wollongong. Okay. Look, if you are looking at being a builder down the track, it is good just to try and just get a little bit familiar with the councils and their websites. Even ask your boss. Your boss might say, oh, I don't mind putting a bit of time aside to go down to council, and some other boss might say, well, look, I find it a great waste of time. I sit there for 3 or 4 hours and I achieve nothing. Okay, so Services New South Wales construction occupation certificate. Okay, we'll just go Services New South Wales. I got a big rap on them every time I've been in there for anything at all. It might be my license, it could be a driver's license, a fishing license. They've been so quick, so efficient. Look, this Services New South Wales, not in Marooma. Okay, well, I can tell you the one in Corrimal. Yeah, Corrimal. Yeah, the one in Corrimal's fantastic. Okay, so apply for a construction certificate. This doesn't issue, Maria's good. Okay, there you go. Application for a construction certificate. Services New South Wales doesn't issue construction certificates. It's just saying, okay, before you start any building or construction work, you need to apply for a construction certificate from your local council. Okay, it just gives you some information here on what a construction certificate is and what you need it for. Okay, and it says here to apply you'll need to hold an approved development consent issued by your local council, have met all the requirements local council placed upon your development consent, and provide details of work such as construction plans. Okay, contact your local council. Okay, that's virtually what it's saying. But as I said, that's a pretty good one-stop shop. This is Shellharbour Council. We'll just have a quick look at them. What happens later on? I couldn't get this to work. It went to an old website. So what we have to do, we've got to click on the writing. I like that website. I think that's a great intro. Very modern. It's on the coast. Okay, so there we have our maps, our pay it, jobs, report it, forms, and plan and build. That's where we want to go. Okay, we go to plan and build, certificates and approvals. So, okay, I want to find out a little bit about the certificates. So, okay, we can go to construction certificates. Okay, so once you've received your development consent, you need a construction certificate before starting work. This is not a requirement. This is not required if the development is approved as a complying development. Okay. This certificate can be issued either by council or an independent principal certifying authority, a building certifier. Okay, but the thing is all this information there? This is just another council, similar website, probably. You know, you'll never get two websites the same, but okay, it's also, you could go to, okay, I want a bit of information on occupation certificate. So there you have it. It says an occupation certificate authorises that the development has been finished in line with the development consent, okay, or the complying development certificate, okay. It says later on though, a building cannot be legally occupied without an occupation certificate, okay. So they say that you can, an interim occupation certificate allows commencement of either occupation or use of the partially completed building. Sometimes as a builder, you might be working for a client and the client wants to do the painting. So that can sometimes spin out getting the occupation certificate. So you would need to say that you could not issue the occupation certificate until they finished the painting, if that's what the council required. Okay, so just go back. We go back. So okay, that's a pretty, as I said, that's a pretty good site. And what you're going to have to do, there's some exercises at the end of the night that you'll go back to these three councils and get the information from. There's some links in the quizzes that are coming up. Okay, council requirements through construction. Show. Okay, now this is really very good as well. It actually shows you from the start to the finish.
2000.
Okay, unfortunately, I don't think I can get it in the middle.
600.
But
to get both front and back done.
Okay, hang on. What I'll do, someone's coming through my. Hang on, I've just got to do something, everybody. Just give me a sec. Participants, mute all. Okay, so I just muted. Someone was actually coming through my speaker. All right, so in your design brief, you've got design brief, then you've got plans and specifications, the tender and the estimate. This is the flow chart of getting your work. Okay, you've started with plans and specifications, tender, estimate, sign contracts, lodge your DA documents, and included in those are consent from owners, details of development, statement of environmental effects, your fees paid, and the plans. Okay, receive a DA number. Every application that goes to council, whether it's council or a building certifier, gets a number. And then if you're successful with that application, you then get a construction certificate. Then you get building works complete, practical completion, and you get issued with an occupation certificate. And in between all this, you get lots and lots of money. That's important. Okay, so, all right, so now look, what there are now, we're down to, we'll just go through some of the activities. The first one is development applications. It's a quiz. Now, it's just a quiz, and what there is with some of these, okay, it's got the link. Okay, refer to the link. So on all these questions, you've got to use these links to actually answer the quizzes. All right, Brett set all these up. I had to change a couple of links, Brett, because they were old, but they're really good quizzes. You've got a development application report. Where are we? Show. Okay, here we go. you can see that on your screen because I actually showed it. Development application report. List and submit all the documents required for the development application for Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Okay, you just received some of the information there from Brett, but you can also have a look at one of the websites as well. Complete the development application only and submit this online. Okay, we went through that. There's a fillable document there. There's a fillable development application that you can access, and I've checked it and it is fillable. It's still working. But if you're having trouble, I don't know, with Apple computers, maybe you can go to the website yourself and just download an application. So, okay, that's the two parts to that. There is a construction certificate quiz. And what this one is, this also has some, this is where you have to refer to the websites as well. Okay, there's 3 questions on this. They're not massive. Okay, so if you want, you can actually get started on those. That's the learning content for tonight. I don't know if Brett wants to, if Brett's still there, or if he wanted to say anything. If not, I'll stop the recording. Stop the recording.